Hello everyone, welcome to our discussion on phylum Chordata. In the last sessions, we have covered the advanced phyla like advanced class like the class Reptilia and class Aves, and now we are moving on to the uh, class Amphibia, which comes soon after, or which is a class which is coming after the superclass species. So coming to amphibians, the amphibians are the first group of animals uh, to have had a life on land when you observe the particular phyla, which is called as the chordates or the vertebrates. Among the vertebrates, these are the organisms. These amphibians are the organisms which were able to lead a successful life on land. Even though they lead a life on land, like reptiles, they do not have a complete adaptation to the land or the terrestrial habitat. So they are at a stage where the evolution has reached, or the evolution is reaching the verge where they are conquering the land. And in such a group of animals, which are called as amphibians, as the name suggests, and bia which means they have the ability to live on two or live in two conditions. As a result, this particular organisms, they live on land, but to complete their life cycle, they have to depend on the aquatic habitat. For every amphibians, they have the ability to survive in land. For example, if you take frogs or toads, they can survive or successfully survive on land, but their life cycle will be complete without the aquatic habitat. That means in some stages of life, they spend that particular time of life. For example, their larval development is completed in aquatic habitats, in freshwater or marine. So this particular group of organism, even though they are having the ability to live on land, they have to depend on water in some stages of their life. So this is the particular group which is called as amphibians. So coming to amphibians, it includes mainly three, or we are going to discuss about three different group of animals in this. One is the always known frogs. uh, After that, we'll be our frogs and trots, which come or which belong to a particular order in Amphibia. After that, we'll be discussing about the if you see this, it feels or it observes like a lizard, but it's not a lizard. It's an amphibian, which is called as the tiger salamander. And also, we'll be discussing about uh, the snake-like. Or the earthworm like organism, which is called as Caecilian. So these are the three main groups that we'll be discussing in this particular class, which is called as class Amphibia. So class Amphibia, it if you see the classification or the hierarchy of this particular group, it belongs to phylum Chordata, subphylum Vertebrata, superclass Tetrapoda. So this particular group, that is amphibians, is the first of this tetrapodon group. That means the organism which is having four legs. Tetra means four, poda means feet. The organism which are having 4 feet, that is a pair of forelimb and a pair of hind limb. So this is the first group of animals which come under tetrapoda, and in that the first one is class amphibia. So coming to the classification diagram or the classification chart, you have the uh, phylum Chordata. So phylum Chordata is just divided into Cephalochordata, Urochordata, and Vertebrata. So those having a vertebral column comes under what is called as the Vertebrata. The others where you are having the minor forms like the Notochord, etc., comes under Cephalochordata and Urochordata. So the organisms with a vertebral column in one or the other form comes under Vertebrata, and that is divided again into two, that is the jawless fishes and the fishes or the organisms which are having jaws and having jaws and also without jaws. In that, the organisms with jaws, that is Gnathos novata, it is again divided into a superclass species where you have all the modern fishes, the bony fishes, the ancient Placodamae, and also the cartilage fishes. Coming to superclass Tetrapoda, that's what we said. The organisms which are having a pair of forelimbs and a pair of hind limbs. There are exceptions like snakes, etc. Even though the major category of animals in tetrapods, they have a pair of forelimbs and a pair of hind limbs, classifying them under uh, tetrapoda. And of this, you have class amphibia, class reptilia, aves, and mammals. Of this, we have completed our discussion on the reptiles and aves, and now we are in amphibians. So this is the classification, or in a view of classification, or where are these organisms, or where is this class which we are going to discuss now. It is in the phylum Chordata. So coming to the, or we'll discuss the salient features first, and we'll move on to the classification. Coming on to the salient features of this particular group, that is class Amphibia. So the class, this particular class, which is called as class Amphibia, they are ectothermic or cold-blooded tetrapods with a pair of pentadactyl limbs, classifying or enabling them to be classified under uh, tetrapoda. So they are capable of both aquatic as well as aerial respiration, and that is why they thrive, or they can thrive both on land and water. The adults also, as I said earlier, they depend on aquatic system for their life, or a particular stage of life. Apart from that, this particular organisms are having the capacity to live both on land as well as water. They can successfully live both on land as well as in water. As a result, the lungs and the lining of the buccal cavity and the skin is efficient respiratory structures in the terrestrial habitat or land. Because the lungs, because they are the first organisms which are using the lungs, their lungs is not as functional as you see in reptiles, aves, and mammals. This is a primitive lung which is not having the full capacity in the sense they do not have the full capacity to meet the respiratory needs of the entire organism. As a result, they also have respiratory surfaces in the buccal cavity as well as the skin, which contributes to the respiratory needs. The skin forms the major respiratory surface in underwater. So, in water, they do not use, or they cannot use the lungs as well as the buccal cavity, and in that cases, the skin forms a major respiratory surface when they are in water. Coming to their external structures like the skin is smooth, slimy, and glandular, and they do not have an exoskeleton. And some caecilians have very smaller scales which is embedded in the skin. So, if you observe the skin, for example, if you consider the frog, you can see that its skin is very smooth. The smooth skin is because, or the slimy structure is because of the glandular skin, which produces skin secretions, which keeps the skin moist. So, keeping the skin moist in the case of frogs and other amphibians is very important because, as we said, the skin is a major respiratory surface. So, respiration to happen efficiently, the skin should be always in a moist condition so that the oxygen from the air will diffuse into uh, the blood vessels in the skin. So that is one important feature, and this slime or the glandular, the mucus which is produced by the glandular glands also prevent desiccation of the skin when they are in terrestrial habitat. Because to survive in land, we saw that reptiles are having a very hard armor so that they can thrive entirely on land. But as amphibians, they have the capacity to live both on land and in water. They do not have developed, they haven't developed any body armor as we saw in reptiles, and to provide protection. Their skin is provided with glandular glands, which keeps the skin always moist, and also the moistness or the moist surface is very essential for the respiration to happen. So coming to the endoskeleton, the skull has two occipital condyle and it is bicondylic. As the case with our skull, it is bicondylic. As a result, it can be freely moved only to 180 degree. It cannot, like birds, it cannot be moved in any direction. The teeth is homodont and acrodont, so you can see homodont in the sense the all the teeth are of the same type. Our teeth comes under heterodont because we are having different types of teeth. Here only one type of teeth is present, and it is acrodont. That means it is placed on the uh, jawbone. In our case, the tooth is it is like this, and like this, which is called as a tooth thecodont, where the tooth is inserted into the jawbone. So here it is on top of the jawbone. So that is with the teeth and the skull. Coming to the other structures like the internal structures, first we'll move on to the circulatory system. In the circulatory system, the heart is three chambered with two atria and one ventricle. So you can see the heart here. You have two auricles which is entirely separated, where you can see that the right atria is larger and the left atria is smaller, you have only a single ventricle. Because this is separated, you have a separation in the atria. Both the deoxygenated blood which comes from all part of the body and oxygenated blood which is coming from the lungs. So here this arrow indicates the blood which is coming from the lungs. This blue arrow indicates the blood which is coming from the blood which comes from the blood which is coming from the right atria, which is a deoxygenated blood. So you can see that there is a partial mixing of, because there is no separation here, there is a partial mixing of blood in the ventricle. But you can see that even though mixing is there, because of the pressure of the ventricles, the blood, even though the blood mixes, there is no chance that the blood is not mixing. But you can see that this arrow, the blue arrow, which indicates deoxygenated blood, so this is what is called as sinus venosus, which can be taken as analogous to that of, or synonymous to that of our aorta, which takes blood to different parts of the body. And this one, it is called as this particular structure. This is called as the sinus venosus, where the uh, here in the sinus venosus, you can see that this particular structure, there is a partition or a spiral structure is formed, which forms internal compartments in this tube. Actually, this is a tube. So this tube, or the inner wall of the tube, is again folded to form compartments inside the tube. And what you can see here is major part of the deoxygenated blood, because of the pressure, it moves in such a way that it enters a compartment, and this compartment is the region, or it is having the opening where the blood moves to the skin for cutaneous respiration. As a result, what happens is the deoxygenated blood, major part of the deoxygenated blood, it is taken to the skin. Uh, it will be taken to the skin for the particular process which is called as the skin for oxygenation. And you can see that major part of the oxygenated blood, the red color, or this particular color arrow which comes in this particular direction, it moves to the region, so that major part of the oxygen, even though mixing happens, major part of the oxygenated blood will be given to the different parts of the body, like like every organs, and also to the lungs. So we'll be discussing about this particular process in detail when you study heart. So we were discussing, or we were looking on to the structure. That's why I made a brief description of this. So heart here is three chambered with two atria and one ventricle. So I mean to say that even though there is one ventricle, the mixing of blood happens, there are some mechanism, and this is that mechanism to ensure that the major part of the oxygenated blood, or the minimum amount of unmixed blood, is reaching the different parts of the body. So sinus venosus is well developed. Three pairs of aortic arches are present. So this is a three pairs. These are called as the aortic arches. So you can see on both sides three pairs are present. Then the renal and hepatic portal systems are present. We'll have a detailed discussion on portal systems in the coming sessions. Then coming to the nervous system, the 10 pairs of cranial nerves are present. Then kidney is opistonephric. So opistonephric kidney is also a primitive type of kidney. So opistonephros is a functional adult kidney in fishes and amphibians. So it is formed from the extensions of the mesonephros along with the tubules of the posterior portion of the embryonic kidney. The functional embryonic kidney in such organism is the pronephros. So we saw that the pronephros, so that the embryonic kidney is a very larger or a longer type of kidney, of which the first portion, if the first portion or the anterior portion becomes a functional kidney, that is called as pronephros. The middle portion is called as a mesonephros, and the most posterior one, that is the one which forms the adult kidney in humans, etc., which is seen towards the posterior region of the body, and that is called as a metanephric kidney. The others will degenerate after embryonic development. So this is a type of kidney which is not completely pronephros, and they cannot be taken as completely mesonephros. So they form, or they take their origin from a small portion of the pronephros region, and also from the mesonephros region. That is why this particular type of kidney, adult kidney in fishes and amphibians, that is given, or that is termed by a new terminology, rather than pronephros, mesonephros, and metanephros. They are given a new terminology which is called as opistonephros, because they have a position between, or the adult kidney is derived from the embryonic kidney, or the region of the embryonic kidney which is at the junction of the pronephros and the mesonephros. So they are ureotelic. That means the excretory product of the kidneys, uh, the excretory product is urea. The excretory product of such organisms is urea, and urinary bladder is absent in them. Coming to fertilization, fertilization is external. That means the eggs are, or the fertilization, the eggs and sperms, they meet in the external environment, and mainly in aquatic systems, except in caecilians. Caecilians are having internal fertilization. The development is indirect in any case. All the three orders that we are going to discuss, they are having an indirect development with larval stages. The larval stages are aquatic, and they possess gills for respiration. So this is about the salient features of this particular group, which is called as the amphibia. And we'll have a brief discussion of the classification of this particular group. So, coming to class Amphibia, its classification. So, class Amphibia is divided into six orders, of which three are extinct orders. So, the extinct orders are Lepospondyli, Phyllospondyle, and Labyrinthodontia. You do not have any living representatives for this groups. Only fossil records are available. The existing orders are three. They are Enura, which where you have the examples of frogs and toads. So Enura, they are also called as Enura, means A means no, and Neura means tail. They are tailless amphibians. Example is the frogs and toads. Even though they have a tail in their embryonic, or not embryonic, in the larval stages, they are having their tail, but it will be lost in the adult. So when adults do not have a tail, such group in amphibians, they are called as Enurans, where you have frogs and toads. Next is Urodela, which includes salamanders and newts. And you have the third order, which is called as the order Apoda. Here also the term indicates A, which means no, Poda means feet. The Tetrapods without feet is called as apoda. And the examples are caecilians, a worm-like or the snake-like or the worm-like amphibians are called as caecilians. So this is an overview of the classification. You have class Amphibia, which is divided into six orders, of which three are extinct orders, three are existing orders. The three existing orders are, as we said, Anura, the Urodela, and the Apoda. So in the next session, we'll be discussing about the characteristic features of each order and the example coming under each order. Thanks for hearing.